My name is Javier, and at 23 years old, I learned a painful lesson that changed my life forever. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the very people you would do anything for. Growing up, I believed hard work earned love. My parents owned a successful logistics company, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect family. But behind closed doors, things were very different. My older brother Antonio was the favorite. He wore designer clothes, drove expensive cars, and spent his days enjoying luxury vacations while everything was handed to him. I was the complete opposite. I arrived at the office before sunrise, managed contracts, solved customer problems, organized deliveries, handled payroll, and stayed long after everyone else had gone home. Whenever something went wrong, my parents blamed me. Whenever something went right, Antonio received the credit. No matter how much I sacrificed, it was never enough. I kept believing that if I worked harder, maybe one day my parents would finally be proud of me. Instead, they only demanded more. By the time I turned 23, I was practically running the entire company by myself while Antonio enjoyed the life I was paying for. Then everything changed. One evening, I had been working for nearly 36 straight hours trying to finish the biggest contract our company had ever signed. My mother, Isabel, kept sending messages telling me not to leave until every page was complete. My eyes burned. My chest tightened. The room began spinning. I stood to get a glass of water, but before I could take another step, the lights blurred together. My vision faded to black. The last thing I heard was my phone ringing again. Another demand from the family that had already taken everything I had left. When I finally opened my eyes, I was lying in an intensive care unit. Bright lights shined overhead. An oxygen mask covered my face. Machines beeped beside my bed. The first thing I did was look toward the chair next to me. It was empty. Only a kind nurse stood nearby. "Where are my parents?" I asked. She hesitated before answering. A security guard had found me unconscious in the office and called an ambulance. My parents had come to the hospital, but after the doctors confirmed I would survive, they left. Not because of work. Not because of an emergency. Because Antonio's luxury vacation to Hawaii was leaving that afternoon. The trip was non-refundable. So they boarded the plane, turned off their phones, and left me alone in intensive care. I couldn't believe it. I kept expecting my phone to ring. One message. One call. Anything. Nothing came. An entire week passed without hearing from any of them. While they relaxed on tropical beaches, I lay alone wondering whether my own family cared if I lived or died. Then the nurses started mentioning a mysterious visitor. Every night, exactly at midnight, an older gentleman wearing an expensive tailored suit came to my room. He never disturbed anyone. He simply sat beside my bed, held my hand, and stayed until sunrise before quietly leaving. Nobody knew who he was. Honestly, I assumed they had mistaken me for someone else. On the 8th morning, my hospital door opened. My mother Isabel walked in carrying shopping bags from Hawaii. My father Fernando followed behind her. Antonio barely looked up from his phone. No hugs. No apology. No concern. Instead, my mother sighed. "It's about time you woke up. You've caused enough problems." When the doctor entered, she immediately demanded my discharge papers. "The company needs him back," she said. "He's wasted enough time here." The head nurse calmly explained that hospital policy required verifying the visitor records before I could be discharged. My mother grabbed the clipboard impatiently. "This is ridiculous." Then she froze. Every bit of color disappeared from her face. Her hand began shaking so violently that the clipboard slipped from her fingers and crashed onto the floor. My father looked confused. "Isabel, what's wrong?" She couldn't answer. She was staring at one name written 7 times. Go Alejandro Vargas. Corre. At that moment, the hospital room door slowly opened. An older man wearing a navy suit entered alongside 2 attorneys. The instant my mother saw him, genuine fear filled her eyes. For my entire life, my parents had told me Alejandro Vargas was their biggest business rival. They had lit. Alejandro looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry it took me 23 years to find you." One of his attorneys placed a folder on the table containing DNA reports, birth records, court documents, and photographs. The truth was almost impossible to believe. 23 years earlier, Alejandro's wife, Sofia Vargas, had died during childbirth. A corrupt adoption agency and dishonest lawyer secretly changed the records, convincing Alejandro that his newborn son had died. Instead, my adoptive parents took me, changed my identity, and raised me as their own while secretly receiving money from a trust Alejandro believed honored his deceased child. Everything they had built had been built using his money. My mother desperately tried to deny it. "It's all lies!" Alejandro's attorney calmly handed her a federal court order freezing every company account. "The evidence has already been verified." Alejandro looked directly at my parents. "You stole my son! You stole 23 years from both of us. And while I spent decades searching for him, you worked him until he collapsed." Then he turned toward me. "Every birthday," he said quietly, "I bought a cake for a son I believed I'd never meet." I couldn't hold back my tears. While my adoptive family spent a week drinking cocktails in Hawaii, my real father had been the mysterious man sitting beside my hospital bed every single night. Within weeks, investigators uncovered forged adoption papers, stolen trust payments, and years of financial fraud. Without Alejandro's funding, and without me managing every part of the business, the company quickly collapsed. Clients left. Suppliers canceled contracts. Employees resigned. 3 months later, the business declared bankruptcy. Antonio's luxury lifestyle disappeared overnight. For the first time in his life, he had to earn his own paycheck. As for me, I legally cut all ties with the family that had spent 23 years treating me like a servant instead of a son. Today, I'm rebuilding my life alongside the father who never stopped searching for me. For the first time in my life, I know what unconditional love feels like. I no longer wake up wondering whether I'm good enough or whether I've worked hard enough to earn someone's affection. I finally understand that real family doesn't use you, abandon you, or make you prove your worth. Sometimes, losing the people you thought you couldn't live without is exactly what makes room for the people who truly belong in your life. And that's exactly where my new beginning started.